Queen Mary II, the largest ocean liner of the world, is sailing west over the Atlantic Ocean, heading to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. At 5 a.m., the ship arrives at the channel entrance, and the Port Everglades pilot will board and guide Queen Mary II to her berth. This afternoon, she will board 2,600 passengers who will sail with her for 24 days to Rio de Janeiro for Carnival. Welcome aboard, Queen Mary II. From Florida, Queen Mary II will sail southeast to our first stop at St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. From the Caribbean, the ship will sail around the bulge of Brazil to Salvador. From Salvador, QM2 will sail on to Rio de Janeiro. Our journey will begin in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the southeastern tip of the United States. Fort Lauderdale is one of the most popular winter suncoast destinations of the American Southeast. Together with the Port of Miami, southeastern Florida is home to over 60% of all of the passenger cruise ship business in the United States. Drawbridges along the intercoastal waterway separate the beach from the mainland. Queen Mary II has been docked here since early in the morning. Hundreds of people are at work provisioning the ship with food and supplies that are necessary for the 24-day cruise. The ship is scheduled to sail at 3, but the dispatchers have been informed that the ship will be delayed, and the reason is luggage. 2,600 passengers are going to be on board for 24 days, and they have brought more luggage than Cunard had ever dreamed possible. Finally, at twilight, the ship inches away from the pier. There are no tugboats. Queen Mary II is completely self-propelled. As the sun sets, Queen Mary II heads to the open sea. It will be 24 days before she returns to Fort Lauderdale. The following morning, Queen Mary II is sailing on a course southeast to our first stop, St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. The ship is doing almost 30 knots. We were 4 hours late leaving Fort Lauderdale, and the Commodore has decided to make up as much time as possible by opening the engines to QM2's maximum speed. Passengers, meanwhile, simply relax on the decks and shift gears into the leisurely pace of life at sea. As the sun sets on our first full day at sea, passengers will return to their cabins to prepare for the evening's activities. The captain's cocktail party will be held tonight. Commodore Ronald Warwick and the senior officers will greet the passengers in the Queen's room. Commodore Warwick is the master of the Queen Mary II. After the captain's cocktail party, passengers will make their way to the Britannia dining room. This is the largest and grandest dining room afloat in the world today. 1,250 people can be served at one time. 2 seatings are required each night to provide dinner for all of the passengers. The ship is very dressy. There will be 10 formal nights in the course of the cruise. After dinner, passengers make their way to the Royal Court Theatre for an evening of entertainment. From Fort Lauderdale, Queen Mary II has sailed over 1,100 miles to our first stop in the Caribbean, St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands. St. Thomas is one of 4 inhabited islands of the U.S. Virgin Islands. There are about 100 islands in total, equally divided between the British and the Americans. This is an American territory. The islands were purchased by the United States in 1917 to protect the Panama Canal routes. The U.S. paid $25 million, about $300 an acre. Today, the island has a population of about 50,000, and on any given day, an additional 10,000 to 15,000 people from cruise ships flood into the capital of Charlotte Amalie. Outside of the main town, St. Thomas is quiet and charming. Marinas dot the coastline and are home to pleasure boats that move between the many islands. Megan's Bay is one of many protected coves. A long, winding road will take you down the hill, but remember to drive on the left. Even though this is in American territory, the British tradition of driving on the left continues. The beaches are uncrowded, great places to stroll, and palm trees swaying in the breeze and beautiful orchids help to complete the picture of what many people call the American paradise. You can see the Queen Mary 2 at anchor. To get a better view, you can ride the tramway to Paradise Point. It is about a 4-minute ride, and it gives you a beautiful view of St. Thomas and the harbor spread out below. St. Thomas is one of the most popular destinations in the Caribbean and our first stop on the way to Rio. The last tender is leaving the shore, and so we return to the ship in the final light of day on a warm evening, as Queen Mary 2 heads on to Rio. It is now the 4th day of our cruise and the beginning of the longest leg of the journey. We will be at sea for 5 days before we arrive in Salvador de Bahia. Passengers enjoy the long days at sea as we sail toward the equator. A variety of activities are taking place today. One of the galley chefs will give a demonstration of ice carving on the deck. Ice sculptures are used in the evening buffets and at the officers' parties. Queen Mary 2 boasts the Canyon Ranch Spa. The spa offers a variety of pools, saunas, massages, and therapies. One of the pools on the top deck is under the stack and has a movable roof that can be used to cover the pool in inclement weather. Queen Mary 2 has a complete gym, as all new ships have today. There is the usual assortment of cardio equipment, circuit training machines, and free weights. Yes, food is the looming attraction of ships. And in the King's Court, waiters bring trays from the galley of freshly baked desserts that are consumed by the passengers in the blink of an eye. For lunch, you can choose to dine alone, or you can join a small or large table depending on your mood. One of Queen Mary 2's most interesting attractions is the planetarium. It is called Illuminations, and it is the first planetarium at sea. Passengers sit in chairs that recline and allow them to look up at a variety of programs that explore the stars and space. It is our 6th day at sea, and today the Queen Mary 2 is going to make her maiden crossing of the equator. This means the court of King Neptune and the initiation of those who have never crossed the equator before.
King Neptune!
Kissing the fish is the tradition used to convert a pollywog, a person who has never been over the equator before, into a shellback, the term given to those who have had the initiation. There are always some second thoughts. misery is saved for the staff. Those staff members who have never been over the equator before get the full treatment. And as bad as this is, it is not as bad as it used to be when everything from motor oil to chicken fat was used to haze the pollywogs. If you would like to do a little research into the ceremony, you can head to the library. Queen Mary II boasts the largest library afloat, over 5,000 books on every subject imaginable. The largest section is devoted to travel, but the library contains everything from bestsellers to reference books. And if your research needs are not met by the library, you can do as everyone does today and head to the internet. Queen Mary II has the latest computers and high-speed internet connections. You can do research, check your emails, send messages, and even IM your friends. Queen Mary II claims to have the largest wine collection of any ship in the world, and the chief sommelier of Queen Mary II conducts wine tastings and gives talks about the various vintages the ship has on board. Wine tastings have become a very popular activity in recent years. And of course, there is shopping. The shops offer the usual assortment of merchandise ranging from duty-free liquor to fine jewelry, perfumes, as well as t-shirts and baseball caps, all emblazoned with the QM2 logo. Queen Mary II has a large art gallery offering a variety of paintings on objects for sale. But the interesting new activity on board ships is to sell the art by auction.
At $5,000, $7,500, $7,000, then
Actors from the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts present plays like The Importance of Being Earnest. In addition to the dramatic offerings, Queen Mary II presents classical music concerts. A trio of Romanian musicians are on board and will present various concerts throughout the course of the cruise. And programs in the Royal Court Theatre offer highlights from operas, such as Puccini's Madama Butterfly. And as the sun sets, passengers will retire early, so they will be ready for our arrival tomorrow in Brazil. From St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, Queen Mary II has traveled 3,200 miles over the equator to our first stop in South America, Salvador de Bahia. A fireboat greets us at the entrance to the harbor. This will be the first time Queen Mary II will be arriving in Brazil. The ship arrives very early in the morning due to the tides. Arrivals and departures of large ships are often timed to the high tide. After the ship is tied up and cleared by the local officials, passengers will disembark. And once off the gangway, we get our first taste of Carnival and Brazil. Greeters, dancers, drummers all sway to the Samba rhythms. Today is the first day of the 7-day celebration of Carnival. In Salvador, the people are mostly of African descent. The Portuguese discovered and settled the northeast of Brazil. They started plantations and imported slaves from Africa. Salvador is Brazil's third largest city after São Paulo and Rio. It has a population of 2.5 million, and it is the African soul of Brazil. The city is divided into two parts, an upper and a lower city. The upper and lower cities are connected by an elevator that was completed in 1896 to connect the port area with the Baroque city center. Salvador is Brazil's oldest city. It was settled in 1501 and was second only to Lisbon as the most important city in the Portuguese Empire. Sugar and tobacco plantations flourished, and slaves were brought from Africa to work the fields. Today, the descendants of those slaves make up 70% of the population of Salvador. A Salvadorian woman prepares a local delicacy on the street, offering them for sale to anyone who passes by. The streets of Salvador reflect early Portuguese life. The pastel-colored homes could be standing on the streets of any Lisbon neighborhood. But it is the churches of Salvador that give the city its European Baroque flavor. 176 different Baroque Roman Catholic churches were built by the Portuguese, mostly in the 18th century. Of all of these churches, the Church of São Francisco is the most famous. It remains an active monastery. The courtyard is filled with beautiful tiles created during the 18th century when the church was built. The interior is covered in gold leaf. The workmanship is interesting because it was done mostly by slaves who added their own touches, giving the interior a distinctly African flavor. Outside the church on the streets, the sights and sounds of Carnival start to fill the air. Musicians play the barumba as men perform a stylized form of martial arts that is distinctly Bahian. It was developed by slaves as a defense against tyrannical masters, and it was actually banned until the 1920s when it began to be viewed as an art form. Tonight, the first parade of Carnival will take place in both Rio and Salvador. On the streets, you start to see the preparations that are underway for this huge national event. Each year, a different theme is chosen, and posters are created to reflect the theme. The posters are plastered over the entire town, adding a flare of color that is distinctly Brazilian and speaks of Carnival. One of the posters was of the legendary Brazilian bombshell Carmen Miranda. She died in 1955, but remains an icon of Brazilian popular culture. Salvador is one of Rio's most exotic destinations, and it remains the soul of Brazil's African traditions. But even though Carnival is starting in Salvador, we must return to the ship because we are headed on to the true heart of the Carnival celebration, Rio de Janeiro. We are now in the southern hemisphere. It is the height of Brazilian summer. The weather is hot and muggy. It is our last day at sea before we arrive in the city of the River of January, Rio de Janeiro. On our last night out before Rio, passengers will enjoy the ship. Many people will be leaving in Rio tomorrow and will be flying home to destinations around the world. Other new passengers will come on board to sail back to Fort Lauderdale. For those leaving tomorrow, there is a special quality about the evening. They will be experiencing for the last night the elegance and grace that comes with a cruise such as this. After dinner in the Britannia dining room, passengers make their way to the Royal Court Theatre, an elegant cap to a wonderful evening. The ship's activities go on late, but eventually the last passengers return to their cabin and the ship becomes silent. The radar scanners rotate silently against a starlit sky. The seas are calm, and the only sounds are those of the haunting wind and the sea 13 decks below. It is 4 o'clock in the morning, and it is a magical time on board the ship. The grand corridors, which bustle with people day and night, are empty. 4,000 passengers and crew members are finally asleep. The elevators, the corridors, the public rooms, the shops, and the dining room are empty. For a brief moment, everything is silent. Time stands still, and yet the ship sails on. And in a few hours' time, all of it will start all over again. The sun peaks over the horizon. On our 12th day at sea, we are nearing our destination. We have sailed from Fort Lauderdale to St. Thomas and Salvador, over 5,000 miles, to Rio de Janeiro, the city of the River of January. Queen Mary II quietly enters the Rio harbor at dawn. The lights of Copacabana tell us we are here. The ship ties up at the Rio Pier at 5 a.m., but by 9 o'clock, passengers are going ashore to see the sights. And from the moment you step off of the ship, you know that you have arrived in Rio for Carnival. And what image says Rio quite as much as this? Copacabana, the most famous beach in the world. The white soft sand and the warm crashing waves have been attracting people from around the world since the city was first discovered in 1502. The mosaic sidewalks are one of the city's most enduring images. Downtown is the historic center of Rio and the Candelaria Church, built in the late 18th century. Nearby is the Metropolitan Cathedral. It was built in the 1960s and is a striking piece of contemporary Brazilian architecture. Cinelandia is the district downtown where you will find the Rio Opera House and many movie theaters. It is a district of cafes where people watching is a popular activity. But there is no better people watching in all of Brazil than on the beach at Ipanema. On any summer day, the beach is crowded with what are simply the most beautiful people in the world. The girl from Ipanema goes walking, and when she passes, the crowd she passes says, "Ah." After dark, Rio comes alive. And tonight, we get an early glimpse of what we will see much more of later, the world-famous Rio Samba shows. Plataforma is a renowned Rio nightclub. Every night, lavish shows are presented that give you a taste of the colorful traditions of Carnival. Dazzling costumes and a continuous swirl of color are the trademarks of the Carnival Samba shows. Queen Mary II will be tied up at the dock in Rio for 4 days, so we are going to use this time to explore Rio and 3 other places in Brazil. Rio is built around Guanabara Bay, and one of Rio's signature sights is Sugarloaf Mountain. It stands a massive peak of granite rising 1,200 feet above the bay. And the cable car ride to the top is one of Rio's most popular attractions. It is a 2-stage trip. The first part of the journey will take you to a small peak. The second car travels to the top of Sugarloaf. From the summit, the view is amazing. The beaches of Copacabana and Ipanema spread out below you. The excursion to Sugarloaf Mountain is one of 3 activities that nearly every visitor to Rio will enjoy. The second popular attraction is the journey to the top of Corcovado to see the Christ statue. This is one of the signature sights of Rio. To reach the summit at 2,300 feet, you can take a taxi along a winding road, but the more popular way is to ride the cog train. This railroad was built in 1885 to take people to the top of Rio's spectacular peak. The railroad was built 40 years before anyone had the idea of putting a statue of Christ on top. And in fact, it was the existence of the railroad that made it even possible. For 10 years, from 1921 to 1931, construction proceeded slowly as the materials for the Christ statue were hauled up Corcovado on the train. The statue was designed and constructed by a French team under the direction of the sculptor Paul Landowski. It was built to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Brazil's independence from Portugal. It stands 125 feet high. It was constructed in France and shipped to Brazil for assembly. The Christ the Redeemer statue atop Corcovado in Rio de Janeiro is one of the best-known sights of the world. Rio de Janeiro is a working city. It is Brazil's second largest city after São Paulo. The population is about 7 million. São Paulo is the primary business center of Brazil, but Rio has a large downtown with office buildings and thousands of office workers. Buses and inexpensive taxis move people through the city. The Rio Opera House stands in the district known as Cinelândia. Rio remains the cultural capital of Brazil. The governmental capital was moved from Rio to the newly created city of Brasília in 1960. At the same time, the poor from the northeast flocked into Rio, filling the hillside slums that are called favelas. This began the creation of the Great Divide between the rich and the poor, which still exists today. The Metro, Rio's subway, is the thread which connects the city. It is clean, fast, inexpensive, and safe, and it is one of the places where you will see the different classes of Rio mingling together. One of Rio's oldest forms of public transportation is the bonde. It is a trolley car which travels from downtown Rio up into the Bohemian district of Santa Teresa. In the 19th century, this was Rio's wealthy neighborhood. During the 1960s, artists moved into the district, and at the same time, the hillside favelas encroached. Today, the Cobblestone District is one of Rio's most eclectic and interesting neighborhoods, with a social and economic mix not found in the rest of the city. The Botanical Garden is one of Rio's most striking attractions. The park was created in 1808 and includes 900 varieties of palm trees. It is a relaxing oasis in the midst of Rio. After seeing Sugarloaf Mountain and the Christ statue atop Corcovado, the third must-see attraction of Rio is the beach at Copacabana. This is the most famous beach in the world. The sand is soft, the water is warm and gentle, and the setting is unparalleled. It is the most beautiful urban beach in the world. The beaches are crowded year-round, but they are especially crowded in January and February during Carnival time. This is the southern hemisphere, so February is the height of Brazilian summer, and the beach is the perfect place to be. Grand hotels like the Copacabana Palace tell of the 1920s and 30s when Rio was the celebrity destination of the world. But the most striking feature of the beaches of Rio are the people. Rio has, without any challenge, the most beautiful people on earth. It is a combination of things. One is the ethnic mix of Europeans, native peoples, and the Africans. The skin tones are dark, tanned, and flawless. The other is a national obsession with beauty. Appearance is everything in Rio. The people of Sao Paulo, Rio's competitive larger urban cousin, accuse the Rio people of toxic vanity. The Rio people just say the Sao Paulo people are stuffy and work too hard. But it should be noted that Rio does have the highest per capita number of plastic surgeons in the world. The end result is impressive, the most beautiful and the most relaxed people on earth. One of the most striking features of Rio is that within the city limits are huge parks that are in rainforests, filled with the vegetation native to southern Brazil. In 15 minutes, you can go from the beach at Copacabana into the misty rainforests of South America. To the north of Rio in the forests are interesting summer resorts that have a distinctly European flair. Petropolis was the summer home to royalty during the reign of the Portuguese over Brazil. It was here that royalty came to escape the hot, muggy summer days of Rio. Brazil was the greatest colony of the Portuguese Empire. The King of Portugal moved the court to Brazil after 1807 when Napoleon's army marched on Lisbon. As a result, Brazil was the only New World colony to ever have a European monarch ruling on its soil. Petropolis was also home to Santos Dumont. He lived in this small house atop a hill in Petropolis. He was developing flying machines in Brazil at approximately the same time that the Wright brothers were inventing flight in America. While passengers are out exploring Rio and the surrounding areas, life on board Queen Mary II goes on. The ship will be docked here for 4 days. Some things continue whether the ship is sailing or in port. One of those things is attending to the cabins. The largest number of people employed on Queen Mary II will be employed in the galleys. The galleys of Queen Mary II are the largest floating galleys of the world. They cover almost an acre. The number of meals produced each day is simply amazing. In addition to the 2,600 passengers, the 1,400 staff members must also be fed. So over 12,000 meals are made on board each day. The salads will be prepared close to the meal times, and the hot food will come off of the hot line at lightning speed during the peak dinner hours. Presentation and appearance are considered to be nearly as important as taste. Each plate will be fussed over so that it looks just right. The desserts are made early in the day. A large part of the staff will work on preparing the desserts. And when you are making sheet cakes for 2,600 people, It is not a time to be doing things on a small scale. Everything in the galley is oversized. And yet the final results are subtle, with delicate flavors and attention to detail that you would expect from only the best restaurants. If there is one area where international staffing has improved things, it is in the galley. When Cunard had a complete British staff, their ships were known for great style, great service, but mediocre food. It was the one area where the French line had them beat. But today, people from all over the world work in the galley of QM2, and they bring with them their own culinary skills. Their combined teamwork produces food that is prepared in mass quantities and yet still retains the flair and individuality of the best restaurants in the world. The servers and the cooks must work closely together to turn out the hundreds of hot entrees and serve them hot at tables that are in some cases a full city block and another deck away. And who is in charge of all of this? It is this man. Jean-Marie Zimmerman is the executive chef of the Queen Mary II and the man responsible for the meals served on board. Queen Mary II is a British ship. Throughout the vessel are elegant reminders of British style and taste. Cunard, when designing the Queen Mary II, looked back to the style and flair of the original Queen Mary. The result is a ship that is modern, and yet a ship that pays tribute to the past. Evening comes, and Queen Mary II continues to lie alongside at the Rio Pier. Some passengers will go out on the town, others will stay on board. It is Carnival, so there are many opportunities for balls, parades, and clubs. And if you want to stay up late, or you have come back to the ship from a night on the town in Rio and are not ready to go back to your cabin just yet, the G32 disco is always open. The disco on board Queen Mary II is one of the best at sea. The light shows, live music, glowing bar, and ever-present dancing make this the most popular place on the ship late at night. It stays open until the last patron leaves, and that is often after the sun comes up. It is our third day in Rio. Many passengers will go to the beach, but some people have chosen to take side trips on the third and fourth day. A small group is going to fly for an overnight trip to Manaus, in the center of Brazil and the heart of the Amazon. Manaus is a city located on the north bank of the Rio Negro in the center of the Brazilian rainforest. The city looks and feels very Portuguese. It was a boom town for 25 years at the end of the 19th century. The boom was built on rubber. Plantation owners tapped the rubber trees and filled the world's needs for rubber until the British stole rubber tree seeds and spirited them away to the Malay Peninsula. Overnight, Manaus went from being a hugely profitable community to near poverty. The city is industrial, not particularly attractive, but it does have one amazing sight, the Theater of the Amazon. It was built in 1896 in the height of the rubber boom. Opera singers and orchestras came from Europe, and for 2 decades it was the cultural center of the rainforest. Manaus lies in the center of the largest rainforest of the world. It rains 250 days a year here, and the future of this rainforest is at the center of worldwide controversy. From 1970 to the year 2000, 14% of the entire rainforest had been destroyed, an area the size of France. No one comes to the center of Brazil to visit Manaus. They come here to see the Amazon. Manaus lies at the junction of the Rio Negro, and the Rio Solimões. Where these two rivers join is called the Wedding of the Waters, where the dark waters of the Rio Negro mix with the clear waters of the Rio Solimões. Together they form the Amazon, the second longest river of the world after the Nile. The beauty of the Amazon is breathtaking, and yet there is no more endangered part of the world. And what is at stake is not just the Amazon, but the future of the planet. By day, these trees absorb carbon dioxide. By night, they release oxygen. As the Brazilian rainforest disappears, the greenhouse effect increases. The planet heats up, and over centuries, the future of the world is at stake. The Amazon is home to the most diverse biosphere of the world. 20% of the world's bird species live in the Amazon jungle. Long-necked herons, ibises, egrets, and storks can be seen at the water's edge. Macaws and parrots fly freely under the canopy of trees that cover the Amazonian region. Beautiful toucans are the most emblematic birds of Brazil. Their long beaks allow them to forage for berries, but the beaks are hollow and light, so they can fly easily across the tops of the trees. Some of the deforestation is done to create agricultural land for natives, almost all of whom live in abject poverty and are desperate for a way to make income and improve their lives. The issues are complex, and domestic and world politics come into play. But the future of the Brazilian rainforest, the Amazon jungle, and the Amazon River are key elements in the larger issue of the future of the planet. On our fourth day in Rio, another group left early in the morning for a day trip to Iguauzu Falls at the border of Argentina. Iguazu Falls is one of the greatest wonders of the world. It is nature on a rampage of sound and fury like no other natural attraction of the earth. The grandeur of white water cascading in a constant roar creates a spectacle that will leave a lasting memory of your journey to Brazil. Iguazu Falls is set on a bend of the Iguazu River at the border of Argentina and Brazil. It actually consists of 275 different waterfalls, and in the rainy season, this can increase to 350 different waterfalls. The falls are set in a dense, lush jungle, and occasionally above the roar, you hear the call of the birds of the South American rainforest. The most impressive part of the falls is Devil's Throat, a horseshoe-like waterfall similar to Niagara Falls in New York and Canada. If you journey to Rio de Janeiro, make the effort to travel on to Iguazu Falls. It is a long journey, but the experience is unforgettable. Back in Rio, all of the passengers have returned to the ship from their overnight journeys, day trips, or afternoons at the beach. As you look around Rio, there is great beauty here, but there are also social problems. Rio has the greatest gap between the rich and the poor of almost any city of the world. Graffiti is a worldwide problem. probably no more severe in Rio than in any other city of the world. The graffiti of Rio is an ever-present reminder that there is much more to this city than the white sands and million-dollar apartments of Copacabana, because often only a few hundred feet away are the favelas, the slums, and the shanty towns of Rio. They cover the hillsides, often side by side with million-dollar neighborhoods. Nowhere in the world do the poor and the rich live so closely together. The slums operate almost as separate cities. Within the favelas is a form of vigilante justice. The police of Rio rarely go inside. And yet it is out of these slums that the energy, creativity, and magic that is Carnival in Rio evolves. The world image of Carnival in Rio is one of wealthy partiers at the Copacabana Palace Ball. And that image is true, but it is only a small part of what Carnival in Rio is all about. Carnival in Rio is the one time of the year when the poor, the rich, and the middle class mingle together, and the people of the favelas, who receive no other positive attention the rest of the year, are celebrated for their creativity and energy. During Carnival, everyone comes out onto the streets, and each year it quickly becomes the largest party on earth. The downtown district of Cinelandia is where everyone will gather, and if you want a little attention and you are willing to go out on a ledge to get it, you can probably turn a few heads, even in Rio. Carnival is a time to celebrate the phrase, "Be yourself." And you have to be pretty outrageous to get anyone to pay any attention to you here. There is no shortage of being outrageous on the streets of Rio during Carnival. This is a city where live and let live has always been a civic policy. The people of Rio remain among the most tolerant and liberal people of the world. And even people who would contend that they are pretty conservative are almost required to let their hair down during Carnival. Spontaneous street parades happen everywhere, and the Samba schools take to the streets to show off their skills. The Samba schools are everywhere, and they range from very prestigious schools that have corporate sponsorship and win prizes at the Sambadromo to ragtag groups of people that seem to materialize out of nowhere and suddenly become a parade. There is a spontaneity about all of this that is uniquely Brazilian. This woman just seemed to show up out of nowhere with a banner to lead this group of tambourine players. As the afternoon goes on, the mood becomes more excited, because once the sun goes down, everything will move to the Sambadromo, the 1-mile-long parade route built in Rio in 1985 to showcase the Independent League of Samba School Parades. The Samba parades of Rio are one of the most amazing visual spectacles of the world. The parades run for 4 nights. The most important parades are on Sunday and Monday night. They begin at 9 o'clock and they will run until 7 o'clock in the morning. There is an overall theme for the Carnival season each year, and then each school will develop its own story. The groups of dancers and each of the 8 floats in each unit will tell an allegory of some sort. The themes can be outrageously funny or sometimes deadly serious. Political figures of the local and world stage are incorporated into the floats each year. There are 80,000 people in the grandstands each night, and almost 40,000 participants in the parades each night. In total, nearly 500,000 people will pass through the Sambadromo, both as spectators and parade participants, during this year's Carnival celebration. Each school has exactly 1 hour and 15 minutes to move 5,000 Samba dancers and 8 floats down the parade route. And starting and ending exactly on time is a major part of the scoring system that is used to determine the winners of the parades. It is ironic that the Brazilians, who are probably the least punctual people on earth, use precise time as a factor in determining the parade winners. And the importance given to the timing is not without reason. If it wasn't a factor in the judging, the group that was supposed to start at 9 o'clock probably wouldn't have it together until 1 a.m. It has always been said that if a hostess in Rio invites you to dinner at 8 o'clock, you should not show up until 10, because if you show up at 8 o'clock, she probably won't even be dressed yet. Rio prides itself on being the most casual city in the world, and that casualness includes punctuality. One of the most interesting things about the parades is their social importance in the city. The Samba dancers are, for the most part, from the slums of Rio. The Samba schools meet in the halls in the favelas. They work and practice their dance steps all year. They raise money to buy the materials to make their costumes and floats, and they put an extraordinary amount of time and effort into the event. There are poor people all over the world. Poor people have very little to look forward to in their lives. But the people from the favelas of Rio have one moment each year when they are important, when the world comes to see them. By directing their attention and focus to this annual event, they have something of pride and something that gives meaning to their lives. For this reason alone, the chance for the poor of a city to stand up and be cheered, Carnival in Rio is an experience that should be admired as a great example of collective self-worth and self-esteem. The Samba parades of Rio are the most spectacular visual events of the world, a part of Carnival in Rio, the biggest party on earth. The ship is sailing at 5 a.m., so at 4 o'clock in the morning, we make our way back to the Queen Mary 2. The ship slips quietly away from her berth in Rio and heads out into Guanabara Bay. The first light of day creates a blue glow under overcast skies. The lights of Flamingo sparkle in the distance, and Sugarloaf Mountain is enveloped in a misty cloud. As we pass Sugarloaf, the pilot boat will come alongside to pick up the Brazilian pilot, and Commodore Warwick will take back command of the vessel and head her out into the open sea. It is now Ash Wednesday, the beginning of 40 days of Lent. Carnival is over for another year, and Queen Mary 2 heads northeast, sailing back to Fort Lauderdale and then on to New York, where she will begin her transatlantic service. Queen Mary 2 is the largest and greatest ship of the world. She is the continuation of the great Cunard tradition of the Queens. She will sail for many years to come, but for those who had the experience, there will always be something special about her first trip to Rio for Carnival.